What's up, Inspire Vision, plus anybody I might be catching on YouTube? We are now on day 4 of our Accelerated Algebra I course. So today was a review over our days 1 through 3. That reviewed the concepts of distribution, algebraic expressions, evaluation, function relationships, and solving one-variable equations and inequalities. So as always, it is time to learn some math. Now, how today worked, we did 14 guided practice questions because I wanted to do a quiz review, because in class they took a 14 question quiz. So on this video, we're going to do the 14 question review, and then I'm going to give you a 14 question quiz that I want you to try on your own before I cover the answers. Because today was a quiz day, I did not give any STAAR questions. Now, if you want to catch all of the lessons to help us prepare for STAAR, make sure you subscribe to catch all the videos. Okay, the first question. The first question says 6x plus 2 parentheses x plus 3. The key concept here was to distribute the 2 and bring down the 6x. So if you distribute the 2, you multiply it by the x. So 2 times x becomes 2x. And then we also have to remember to multiply times the 3, and that becomes a 6. Now the next concept here is to combine your like terms, which is your two x's. They're on the same side of the equation, so we just do 6 plus 2. 6 plus 2 is 8x. We have to remember to bring down the x, because when we're adding, we're not adding the x, we're just bringing it down. And then bring down your plus 6, because there's nothing I can combine that with. These do not combine together because they're not like terms. So that's it. That's my answer for number 1. Number 2, the tricky thing about number 2 is to distribute the negative 3 here. A lot of times people don't want to distribute the negative sign with the 3, but that is part of the number that's in front of the parentheses. But this 4x, that just comes down. So when you multiply negative 3 times 1x, it becomes negative 3x. And then negative 3 times positive 2, this is what people forget a lot of times, that becomes negative 6. So you write it as minus 6. Now when you combine like terms, you're combining 4 plus negative 3, or because plus minus is the same thing as minus 3, 4 minus 3 becomes your 1x. And this is your answer, 1x minus 6, because those are not like terms. Number 3 looks a little bit more challenging, but it's really the same concept. You have two sets of parentheses, so you're going to distribute the positive 5 in front of this first parentheses and the positive 4 in front of this parentheses. The 8x just comes straight down. So when you distribute the positive 5 in front of the first parentheses, you multiply 5 times x, which is 5x, 5 times negative 6, which is negative 30. Then 4 times x, which is 4x, and then 4 times 4, which is positive 16. Now when you combine your like terms, we have 3 different x's. So we're doing 8 plus 5 plus 4, bring down your x, and that is 17x. Also, our whole numbers, we can combine them together because there's 2 of them. So negative 30 plus 16, that combines together to be minus 14. So that's your answer, because those aren't like terms. On number 4, really the only thing you have to worry about right here is the minus parentheses minus x. Everything else, the parentheses don't have a number in front. So it's like I don't even need this parentheses or this parentheses. So I could rewrite everything so far until we get to this minus parentheses minus x. Another thing to note here is the plus negative 3. Plus negative just means minus, so I don't need to write plus negative sign, just like in the previous problem. So right now I have negative 7y minus 3 plus 2x plus 7y. Now this minus minus x, you can think about it as negative 1 times negative 1, or remember the rule that negative negative means plus, so we're going to write plus 1x. Now when I combine like terms, I'm not combining everything together. I'm only going to combine my y's together, which is negative 7 plus 6. Then I'm going to combine my x's together, which is 2 plus 1. And then the negative 3 doesn't combine with anything, so I'm going to bring it down. So when I combine my y's together, I have negative 1y, then plus 3x, then minus 3. And that is it. That is my final answer on this one. Number 5, we covered this in day 2. We talked about what's a function. Now, a function has to pass the vertical line test on a graph, and it can only have one x. What the vertical line test means is if I draw a straight line down on the picture on A, it would hit 2 times. I can only have it hit once, so that means A is out. And if I draw a vertical line down on B, on this vertical line that's already there, it would hit multiple times. So that would mean B doesn't just hit once, so that's out. And then on D, if I draw a vertical line down, it would hit twice right here where the black dots are. It would only hit twice right there. It wouldn't hit twice anywhere else. But that makes it not a function. And on C, it doesn't matter where I draw this straight line down at. It would only hit once. So C is the function that I was looking for in this problem. Okay, number 6. This is called function notation. The parentheses -8, that stands for x being -8. So over here where we have our equation, 42 divided by x plus 6, we would need to plug -8 in for x. Or we would need to type this equation, since we have an equation, into our y equals key. But either way, we need to make sure we use parentheses for our denominator because we have 2 terms in the denominator. This happens anytime you have 2 or more terms in the numerator or denominator. And we have 2 terms in the denominator. So if you were to type this into your y equals key, you would need to type in 42 divided by parentheses x plus 6. Then, since we're looking for -8, you would go to your table where -8 is, and then you would see your answer's -21. Or you could use your calculator and type in 42 divided by, but instead of writing x, we would say -8 plus 6, because we never want to type x into our normal part of our calculator, only into y equals. And then if we hit enter right here, we would get the same answer as -21. I showed you 2 different ways to do this problem because it doesn't really matter which way you do this problem. You can use it to double check your answer. All right, number 7. Number 7, we're talking about a function again. And we have to remember that a function means x can't repeat. We can only have one x. So if you look at each one of these answer choices, there's only one of them that has only one x. And that would be A, because B has 3 twice for x's, C has -9 twice for x, and D has -5 twice for x. Okay, number 8 is another function notation, but this time they gave us a negative number for x. So we have to be careful here. When we plug in a negative number, and really it's a good idea to do it anytime, we need to plug in parentheses when typing in x. So if I was to type it in my calculator, I would need to type in as -20 divided by parentheses -5 divided by 2. Now notice how I said negative twice here. Normally our rule is if it's our first number, it's the -1. Our second number, that's the -1. But when we write a fraction, it starts the rule back over. So that's the reason why both of these are negatives. So make sure you type them both negatives in your calculator or into your y equals key. It's -20 as your first term. Okay, so if I hit enter right here, I would get -0.8. And -0.8, if I hit math enter, is -4/5. Math enter is our little trick that we do to turn decimals into fractions. Now, if I use my y equals key, I would type in -20 divided by x squared, and then go to our table and we see -0.8. Now, the downside of using your table is your table only shows your answers as decimals, not as fractions. Okay, number 9. Number 9 is one of the reasons why I slowed down, is because I needed to make sure my class got good at solving basic equations. So I taught them how to solve equations using these shapes. Now, in number 9, we don't have to worry about these first 3 steps. The first 3 steps stand for distributing, clearing fractions, and combining like terms. In number 9, we're solving for x. So all we have to do is set up our rectangle, set up our triangle. So if we solve for x, our rectangle goes right in front of x, which is 5. Our triangle is -4 in this case because our x is on the left-hand side. we still have another term on the left-hand side, which is -4. Now, the reason why I have an up arrow is because after I finish setting up my rectangle and triangle, then I need to go in reverse and clear my triangle next by doing its opposite. And it clears by doing, if it's -4, it would clear by using plus or minus its opposite. So it would have to be +4 on both sides of the equation. That cancels this -4 out, so that's gone. And then we have 41 plus 4, which we can do, and that becomes 45. So the 5x comes down, and the 5 was in a rectangle, and this would be our last step to divide by the rectangle, because that's how we get rid of rectangles, multiplication or division. And right now that 5 is being multiplied by x, so its opposite would be to divide by 5. So 45 divided by 5 would be 9. That is my final answer. So that's how I taught them what to look for and what step to look for. And this comes in really handy when we do day 5 solving for y, day 6 solving for y when we have inequalities. So this will come into play a lot during our lessons. Okay, number 10. Number 10, we have -8.6 in front of x. So if I'm solving for x, I go through the same steps, but the number in front of x is -8.6. I do not have a triangle in this problem because there's only one term on the same side of where x is. There's nothing else on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So no triangle. We don't always have a triangle. So that when we always have a rectangle. So the only thing we have to do here is not add 8.6 to both sides. That's only when we have a triangle. What we have to do is divide -8.6 on both sides. And another important note is we never change the sign when we divide. Okay, so all we need to do, we can use our calculator here, type in -2.236 divided by -8.6, and we get a decimal point of 0.26. Now we can turn that into a fraction by hitting math enter, which is 13/50. All right, number 10. Number 10 is a fraction, so we have to remember our rules where we're going to be on the second step right here, where we have a fraction. We have to remember our rules for clearing fractions. Here they are. The rules for clearing fractions is to make everything in the problem a fraction. The only thing in the problem that's not a fraction right now is this -7. This x also needs to be moved up to the numerator because it's right beside the fraction and not separated by plus or minus. So that's what this looks like. Then our second step is multiply by the LCD. Well, if you look at the denominators, we only have 5 and 1. So the LCD, the lowest common denominator, would be 5. So we would multiply the whole thing by 5, all the numerators. So 5 times 1x becomes 5x. We keep the same denominator. And 5 times -7 is -35. Keep the same denominator. Now next, step 3 is to reduce. So 5x divided by 5 becomes 1x. -35 divided by 1 is -35. Now if you divide both sides by 1, you still have -35. So that's my answer for number 11. Number 12 works pretty much the same. You would want to make everything a fraction because we need to clear fractions. So this -6 though is its own term, so that -6 needs to go over 1, or -6 needs to go over 1. And the y still needs to go in the numerator because that y is not separated by plus or minus. Now next we need to clear our fractions. Our LCD again here is 5, so you multiply 5 times all your numerators, and you have 35y over 5 minus 30 over 1, and then 40 over 1. If you reduce 35y divided by 5, it becomes 7y minus 30 equals 40. Now, this would be the point where we would want to set up our rectangle and our triangle. We're solving for y in this case. So the number in front of y is this +7, and we have another term on that side, which is -30. The reason why we did that was because now we should know what to move next. We always move our triangle next, which in this case, to move the -30, we would do +30 on both sides of the equation. Now 40 plus 30 is 70. This will cancel, leaving me with 7y equals 70. Last step we need to do to solve this problem, divide both sides by 7 because that's my rectangle. Then y equals 10 because 70 divided by 7 is 10. That's it for this question. All right, only 2 more questions to go, and then you start your questions. So on number 13, we have another fraction problem, and everything is almost already written as a fraction except for the x. So we would want to move the x into the numerator like this. And then the tricky thing on this question is to figure out the LCD. Well, the LCD here might not be as easy to see. We have 6, 3, and 4. So I gave a tip of always using your biggest denominator to help you find the LCD. So you got to think of multiples for your biggest denominator. So 6 times 1 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18. The smallest number that all of them go into is the LCD. In this case, it's 12, because if I made a list out, 12 is the lowest number that all comes in common. Now, if you multiply all your numerators by 12, this will be 12x divided by 6, then 12 times 1, 12 divided by 3, 12 times negative 3, negative 36 divided by 4. And then if we reduce, which is our third step, 12x divided by 6 becomes 2x, 12 divided by 3 is 4, negative 36 divided by 4 is negative 9. Okay, that was our clearing our fractions. We don't have like terms. Now we're ready for our rectangle and our triangle. So our rectangle is going to be the 2 in front of x, and the triangle is the minus 4. So next we move the triangle by doing plus 4 on both sides of the equation. And if we do negative 9 plus 4, people like to forget about this negative sign. Don't forget about that negative sign because it becomes negative 5. Then divide by 2. Negative 5 divided by 2 is negative 2.5 or negative 5 over 2. Either answer works. Okay, next. Number 14. Looks simple, but we want to use the same steps. We're solving for x, so the number in front of x, which would be an imaginary 1, that's my rectangle. My triangle is plus 6. We always move the triangle next, so we're going to do subtract 6 on both sides of the equation. So that means we have 1x equals negative 14. Now if we divide both sides by 1, x is negative 14. Okay, so what I'm going to do next, I'm going to show you each of the 14 questions, and then I need you to pause and work out these questions or write them on a sheet of paper before I cover the answer. Okay, here comes the next 2. And make sure you pause and work them out. Here comes the next 2. Here is 7 and 8. Here comes 9 and 10. Here comes 11 and 12. Here comes 13 and 14. All right, these were the same. Well, I gave a couple different versions in class, but this is one of the versions that I gave in class. All right, here comes the answers to number 1, but of course I want you to try them out before you see the answers. All right, number 1, you should have distributed 6 to both the 6x and the negative 2 to get 6x minus 12, and the negative 2 to x to become negative 2x, and the negative 2 to 3 to become minus 6. Then when you combine all of your x's together, that's 6 plus 6 minus 2 to be 10x. Combine your whole numbers together, and that's negative 18. These are not like terms, so that's 10x minus 18 as my final answer. Number 2, you distribute negative 9, and only negative 9. You bring down the 7 and then minus 6x. Negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. Negative 9 times x is negative 9x. When you combine your like terms, you combine your x's together, so negative 9 minus 6 to be negative 15x, and 7 minus 18 together to be negative 11. That's your final answer for number 2, negative 11 minus 15x. Or you could have flip-flopped that to be negative 15x minus 11. Okay, the answers for number 3 and 4. This one, it has 3 different like terms. It has the one that is x to the 7th power y. So you take the positive 6 minus 2, and that becomes 4x to the 7th power y. Then you combine your xy's together that don't have exponents, and that's negative 8 minus 3 to be negative 11xy. Then you combine your negative 7 and your negative 5 together because they're your whole numbers without variables, and that's negative 12. That's your final answer. On number 4, you distribute negative 4, you keep track of that negative sign, and that negative 4 turns the 6 into negative 24, and negative 4 times x is negative 4x. You combine your two x's together to be negative 8, because negative 4 plus negative 4 is negative 8, or negative 4 minus 4 is negative 8. Same type of deal. And then negative 8 minus 24 is negative 32. Here comes 5 and 6. 5, we're looking for a function, so it can only hit once. The only graph that does that is b. On number 6, we're plugging in negative 4, so we have to make sure you use parentheses. So you can use your normal part of your calculator and plug it in with negative 12 divided by negative 4 in parentheses squared, which is negative 0.75, or if you hit math enter, negative 3/4. Or if you use your y equals key, which you can because f of x is the same thing as y equals, then you'll see the negative 0.75, which is totally fine as the answer. Number 7 and 8. Number 7, we were supposed to change the values because we had two negative 6's. The only answer that changes my negative 6's is A, because it will change one of the negative 6's into negative 2, then none of my x's repeat. Number 8, we had to make sure to put the denominator in parentheses, so it's negative 7 minus 4 in the denominator, and when we divide it, we should have got negative 3, or we can type that into our y equals key, go to negative 7, and we see negative 3 as our answer. All right, 9 and 10. Number 9 is a fraction, so we should have multiplied all our numerators by 15. If we did that, we have 60 over 15 plus 15s over 1 and 210 over 15. Then when we set up our rectangle triangle, we're going to move the triangle first by doing minus 4 on both sides to get 10 and divide by 15 to get 2/3 because this simplifies. Okay, number 10, we only have we only have a rectangle, so we only have to divide by negative 3 over 2. Which will give us the answer as negative 3.4. All right, here comes 11 and 12. 11, we're going to add 4 to both sides to be 15, and then divide by 5 because we want to move the triangle first. Divide by 5 because that's our rectangle, and we get positive 3. Number 12, we're going to put the x in the numerator, and that's going to be 1x over 6 equals negative 5 over 1. LCD is 6. So it's going to become 6x over 6 and negative 30 over 1. Reduce, and you now have 1x equals negative 30. If you divide by 1, that's not going to change anything, only if you were to divide by negative 1. And our answer is negative 30. All right, last 2 questions for today. So number 13, we have a little bit harder fraction to clear. Our LCD here would be 12 because all of these numbers can go into 12. And then we would multiply 12 times 3 to be 36x over 4, 12 times 1 to be 12 over 3, and 7 times 12 to be negative 84 over 12. Now let's say you didn't pick 12, you picked 24. You would have a little bit bigger numbers, but your answer would come out exactly the same. Okay, so don't worry if you didn't pick exactly 12. As long as it's a multiple that everything goes into. Normally you want the lowest one, that way it's easier numbers. But for me, I have 9x minus 4 equals negative 7 after I finish reducing. My rectangle's 9, triangle's minus 4, so the first thing I'm going to do is plus 4 on both sides, which is negative 3. And then 9 divided by negative 3, I would type negative 3 first in my calculator, divide by 9 second, and that comes out to be negative 1/3. And last question, I would want to put a 1 in front of m, add 2 to both sides because it's my triangle. 14 equals 1m. I can move the m over to the left how I like it. And m is equal to 14. Okay, I hope you got something out of today. We have 18 days to prepare for STAAR. This was day 4. Please stay tuned to catch all of the videos. Thank you.